Did you know that fairies were once considered as real as any other aspect of life, and that their name derives from the Latin word for fate? Hello and welcome to World History Encyclopedia. My name is Kelly, and in honour of International Fairy Day on June 24, we are going to explore some of the history of fairies and fae folk from different cultures in the ancient world. Don't forget the easiest way to support us is by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on our new videos every Tuesday and Friday. I'm sure that when I say the word fairy, you automatically think of something like this. Your fairy is probably a pretty girl with wings and a wand, and she's probably pretty small. But the idea of a fairy actually has an incredibly long history, and not just one origin point. The Fairy of Fae developed independently in a number of cultures, including Slavic, English, Persian, French, German, and Celtic. And what a fairy was and what it was called in each of these cultures was different. The word fairy comes from the Latin word fata, which means fate. Fairies were also associated with enchantment because supernatural beings who could enchant were thought to influence and even control one's fate in life. Fata, as alluding to enchantment, referenced the land where the supernatural fairies lived, as well as the creatures themselves. Although we know the small winged beings by this term today, they did not originate in Rome, but have a much older origin, appearing as Peri in Persian mythology and as daemon in ancient Greece. These were minor divinities, not gods or goddesses, but spirits who delivered messages from the gods to humans. They could do this invisibly or assume physical form, but either way, it was up to them to deliver the message honestly, as intended, or have some fun and change it slightly, alter it completely, or decide they had better things to do and not deliver it at all. Fairies helped explain the seemingly unexplainable, such as where something or someone went when they disappeared, why people sensed an event before it happened, and good or bad luck which seemed undeserved. In ancient Persia, the Peri were thought to have once been humans who were imprisoned as fairies after death to atone for their sins. These people hadn't been model citizens while they lived, and weren't so much after death either. They were responsible for stealing and hiding personal belongings. Think of any time you can't find your car keys, even though you always put them in the same spot, or causing other mischief in the home, but could just as easily bring important messages from the divine, or help people find lost items or perform other good deeds. For the most part though, they are depicted in Persian works as causing trouble more often than helping anyone. In ancient Greece, we find this same model in nymphs, who were elemental spirits living by streams, in the woods, mountains, and fields. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey both mention nymphs, but they're best known from Aesop's Fables, where they turn up fairly regularly. They are not always depicted in human form with wings, but can be horses, foxes, or other animals. In the fable The Fairy Gardens, a group of fairies, looking as you'd expect, abduct a shepherd for their queen and bring him to fairyland for a year and a day until he finds a magic box for the queen and is sent back home. While in The Magician's Horse, the fairy character is a large black horse who helps a lost prince find his way in the world. Fairy tales, defined as stories about fairies or some type of enchantment, often follow this storyline of the missing person abducted by fairies who either returns or is never heard of again. Either way, fairies are always agents of transformation in one way or another. They can reward good behaviour, punish bad, or act for absolutely no reason at all. In any case, the person or people they interact with are changed in large or small ways. Although ancient Iran, Persia, and Greece are often cited as the origin of fairy tales, many different cultures developed the concept, and it seems on their own. The indigenous tribes of North America, for example, had no contact with either of these cultures, but had their own version of fairies in the form of the trickster god, often depicted as a coyote, who might deliver important messages or trick a person, but always brought some sort of transformation. In ancient China, fairies also appeared as animals and served the same purpose. In Norse mythology, the Disir were female fertility spirits who aided women in childbirth and made the crops grow unless they were angered, in which case they could cause problems. The Norse also developed the concept of elves, which were considered fairy folk. The famous Valkyries, who brought the souls of fallen warriors to the afterlife of Valhalla, could also be considered fairies. In Japanese culture, you have the spirits called the Yosei, which were beings with supernatural powers, which you could probably consider as a sort of super fairy. Another sort of super fairy was the nymph. The term nymph comes from Greece, where they were understood as elemental spirits of water, air, earth, and fire. But nymphs came to be associated with fairies during the medieval period, when they were understood to simply be larger fairies. This recognition of the nymph became more widespread in Europe, especially after Aesop's Fables were translated into English and published in 1484 by the printer William Caxton. Although Caxton's work popularised fairies in literature, they were already known through folk tales preserved by oral tradition. In medieval Europe, this is exemplified by the Arthurian legends, tales of King Arthur and his knights, which frequently feature fairies and magical beings. These stories began as folk tales and legends until they were written down in the Middle Ages. The Arthurian legends are a virtual showcase of magical beings of all types, drawing on folk figures passed down through oral tradition. Pixies, elves, dwarves, hags, trolls, and goblins are all recognisable creatures which are considered fairies, as are changelings. Changelings are beings who have replaced someone, usually a young person or child, abducted by fairies. The changeling is frequently a fairy itself and possesses supernatural powers. Fairy tales in Europe followed the same basic pattern as those of Persia and Greece. Stories of fairies and their antics were collected by the Grimm brothers in Germany and published as Grimms Fairytales in 1812, standardising the stories while also giving alternative versions. Jacob Grimm's Teutonic mythology developed this further in 1835 and became the standard reference work for others on the subject. Still, the Grimms did not invent the fairy tale, and similar stories are found in many different cultures. One of the best known fairy tales in the world, Cinderella, was known in cultures as diverse as Greece and China before it was standardised by the French writer Charles Perrault in the 17th century, who popularised the concept and figure of the fairy godmother in his Cendrillon in 1697. French fairy tales follow the same basic pattern as those of other cultures. And the same is true of Slavic tales, where the Slavic fairies, known as Avila, singular, or Vili, plural, are depicted as beautiful women with long blonde hair who are kind to humans unless angered. They then became vengeful and could transform themselves into any sort of animal or even a storm to right a wrong. In Scotland, one still hears of the Brownie, a household spirit who can be helpful or mischievous, and in Ireland one finds the Sidhe, the people of the hills or people of the mound, who might reward you or trick you or take you away to their world, depending on their mood, just like the ancient Peri of Persia did. In Brittany and France, fairies are known as Corrigans, who hate Christianity and are seen as immoral tricksters. For most people in the modern day, fairies are often seen only as ornaments in gardens or illustrations in children's books. But once upon a time, they were as real to people as any other aspect of life, and you had to be careful to stay on their good side, or else. What is your favourite fairy tale? Let us know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on our new videos every Tuesday and Friday. This video was brought to you by World History Encyclopedia. For more great articles and interactive content, head to our website via the link below. World History Encyclopedia is a non-profit organisation, so if you'd like to support our work, you can head to our Patreon via the link in the top corner of the screen or via the Patreon link down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon with another video.